Good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. Hope you had a great weekend. I'm Jeff Snyder and this is BRN AM for Monday, November 4th, 2019. And here are your top stories. What millennials must save to actually retire at age 65. And a hiring boom in an unexpected place. It's Social Media Monday, and that means a look at the latest trends in social media when it comes to retirement, personal finance, and more. And joining us from San Francisco, California, Devin Banerjee. He is the Senior Financial Services Editor for LinkedIn. Devin, welcome back to the program. How was your Halloween?
It was really nice, Jeff. We had a few trick-or-treaters at our door. I did not go trick-or-treating or even dress up, unfortunately, but the Halloween spirit was in the air on my block in San Francisco.
Excellent. I spent it watching the 1978 version of Halloween. I love that movie. It's John Carpenter. I'm sorry, Rob Zombie, but it was a great movie.
Nice.
So I know we're going to talk for two segments, as we always do. And I think the first segment, you wanted to talk about millennials and retirement and savings.
Yeah, so speaking of Halloween, this was a really scary story we featured last week. It's some new research out of MIT, an economist there named James Poturba. And the headline takeaway is that our assumptions about how much young people should be saving for retirement really need to be rethought, and the bar needs to be raised. So today you hear, in the range of 15%, for example, of every paycheck should go to a retirement saving account like a 401k. Poturba really says those assumptions need to change. So he wrote this paper, Retirement Security in an Aging Society. And really the point is that society is aging very, very fast. So in 1950, here in the US, the share of people over the age of 65 was about 8%. In 2050, it's projected to be about 21%. So society is really aging. The previous generation had things like Social Security, defined benefit plans or pension plans. And what we've seen, obviously, over this generation is the share of responsibility for retirement security has really shifted to the individual. And the assumptions that really need to be rethought, one is that is investment returns, for example. The past decade or so has been able to enjoy 10% annual historical returns, even more than the past decade. Those are projected really to come down. Economists at Vanguard say about 3 to 5% on average. That's before inflation. If you look at a real return after the cost of inflation, you're looking at about 1 to 2%. So that assumption really needs to change. The other is obviously Social Security. That reliance on that program will go down in the future if Congress doesn't make really rapid changes, in the next few years. And so, basically what the takeaway is here is, that old phrase, "I'll work until I'm dead," is really becoming more and more of a reality. And it's the situation's quite scary here in the U.S., especially if people assume that they are going to retire at 65. That's really one of the assumptions in this paper, which if you look at surveys, people still think that that's the norm, even as people live longer. So I think that will also need to change as this generation reaches that age.
Yeah, well, we've been training people to that 65 is retirement age. So I couldn't understand why people wouldn't think that retirement wouldn't happen at 65. But I think realistically, I think you're right. It's got to go up. And I would think, and I don't know I haven't read the paper or the article, unfortunately, but I would think that this is in line with what other countries around the world, Japan, China, others in Europe are getting older. We're not having the same birth rates. You mentioned investment returns, and we did a show last week with George Grombacher, which was a follow-up to our show on alternative investments with Tucker Piner from Bloomberg. And, we posit and say whether or not alternatives are part of America's retirement plan future. And it sounds like, just like in the pension arena and the foundation arena and the endowment arena, the reality is getting the returns that you need may take some additional alpha or additional added value from some of these alternative investments.
I mean, exactly. If you think about pensions and others that have a hurdle to meet their payouts of 8% on investment returns, historically they've achieved that and they think they can still achieve that largely using those alternative types of assets. So outside of stocks and bonds, things like real estate, private equity, and infrastructure, energy and natural resources, other strategies like that. I mean, here in the U.S., because of regulation, those illiquid type assets are not really allowed in traditional retirement plans or DC plans, 401k plans, for example. Obviously the alternative industry, the alternative asset management industry is trying to change that. And,
Yeah.
for many of them, it is an asset gathering exercise. But I think it's something that people should study and pay attention to, and those in the position to change policy, so policymakers should certainly look at that. Because to your point, the private pension plans have been able to achieve those type of returns with that larger diversification in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that, when you think about this, I mean, you talk about it from the top down. So you look, kind of paint the umbrella. It's not just about, the birth rate is really important. If you don't have people to replace the people that are there today, and it's a low birth rate, obviously you're inversely populating. That's not a good thing. It doesn't help you with Social Security. It doesn't help you with Medicare. The funding vehicle's there. And it certainly doesn't help you if you're in a public pension plan or, that inverse relationship doesn't help in the actuarial evaluations that are done there. So when you look at the DC plan, that is the sole source of income, retirement income for a lot of people. If they're privileged enough, by the way, to have a DC plan, because many don't even have that. They may have an IRA. Where do you get the return from? I mean, you can only ask so much by contributing 15, 30, 40%. That's a lot to ask, especially of younger people to contribute, especially if they're working in a gig economy where they're not making that kind of money. There's got to be alternatives, pun intended, to be thinking about.
Yeah, and we're not even talking about the pre-saving process of earning and budgeting, the issues with wage growth, the issues with the runaway costs in the healthcare system here in the U.S., of interest on education, debt, on student loans. I mean, all of that is kind of new to this generation, or at least worse for this generation than previous generations. And just this amalgamation of factors is, as this economist from MIT is really raising the alarm about, this confluence of factors is quite scary.
Yeah, I think there's obviously a lot on the plate of regulators, legislators. Clearly, a lot going on in Washington, D.C. these days, and a lot with infrastructure and other areas of our economy that need to be tending to. But, if we don't solve this, I mean, first of all, we're not going to solve the birth problem. You and I are not going to solve the birth problem, and we're not going to solve it today. But that's clearly an issue for our country, and it's an issue for countries around the world. But that seems like it's problem-solving issue number one. And number two, how do you build around a retirement system for a lower birth-rated society where we're not reproducing people and those people are not contributing, and then yet the mortality of people is, going up like the J curve. So a lot of work to be done, I think, there, Devin.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's some of the commentary we're seeing here is that with all of these issues on the plate of regular people, the systemic issues and causes of all of this are not really being addressed with the same urgency among policymakers and lawmakers. So I think everyone has a role here to play. But I think, as you and I have talked about a lot in the past, this type of education around what an individual can do with his or her budgeting and saving and investing and just being smarter around that, I think is a very kind of practical, tangible approach that should be incorporated with those other approaches as well.
Yeah, lots to think about there, Devin. Thanks for bringing that up. So when we come back, we're going to shift gears. Devin's got a lot more on his plate in general, but also on the show. So stick around. We'll be right back right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Welcome back, and as I mentioned before, there are 128,000 new jobs in the month of October. That beats expectations, but there's also a place where there is some unexpected job growth. Devin Banerjee, Senior Financial Services Editor from LinkedIn, is still with us. Devin, thanks for sticking around this morning.
Absolutely, Jeff.
I know we want to shift gears from, actually literally, from millennials to transportation hiring. What can you tell us is going on there?
Yeah, transportation emerged as kind of an unexpected bright spot in hiring in the past month. A combination of Bureau and labor statistics data, as well as exclusive LinkedIn data we looked at. So the BLS shows about 16,000 jobs added in September. These are jobs like trucking, air freight, warehousing. And our data here at LinkedIn finds that one of the interesting things happening is this industry is really morphing the types of jobs and roles in it. So in addition to, truck driving, packaging, et cetera,
right.
The industry is really looking more for software engineering skills, sales, accounting, recruiting, data scientists. So it's really the face of this industry is changing. It's people who can study, operations research or optimizing routes and other processes within warehouses, within factories. Another takeaway is that the locations where these jobs are really booming are really in the heartland of the U.S., and that's a good sign for the U.S. So cities like Chicago actually topped the list of the cities where our data shows these jobs are growing the most. Dallas, Fort Worth, Atlanta, Houston, Detroit, the Minneapolis-St. Paul region. And so that was another takeaway. A third takeaway I'll mention is because of the increase in these non-traditional roles in the industry is actually becoming a lot more friendly to women, kind of for the first time. And this is an industry that has been quite male-dominated in the past. XPO Logistics, for example, one of the largest logistics companies in the U.S. That we spoke with, said women now constitute about a quarter of its global workforce, and that's compared to an industry average of, unfortunately, just about 15%. And XPO says the inflow of talent that is women is really outpacing that of men. So a real interesting shift happening in the industry and kind of a changing face, literally, of the people in the industry and the types of roles that are key to its success.
Yeah, two questions for you, Devin. The first is around sustainability. Did the presentation, did the research at all factor in the changes that might be brought about by ESG and suitability?
Yeah.
Sustainability, I'm sorry.
We saw some of the conversation that ensued really touch on that topic, especially around this other story we featured about how the delivery mechanism of like package delivery, for example, is really wreaking havoc on cities and on roads around the country, if you think about it. And so some of the conversation there was really from people saying that one of the key steps that cities and policymakers have to take around this delivery system that's occurring with e-commerce and shopping online is that delivery needs to be more sustainable. So we need to think about, electric cars, electric trucks, and even drones and other things like that are really transforming how delivery works. We have to ensure that that is done in an environmentally sustainable way.
Or banana peels like they did in Back to the Future. Or at least trash. I forget what it was. Last question, Devin, about benefits. We have often talked on this program and also on the podcast about the importance of employee benefits. Any research there about the importance of retirement benefits, other voluntary benefits, or even like healthcare?
Yeah, that's a very good point that emerged in the conversation. A lot of people said, look, these numbers are great, but they kind of mask the fact that a lot of these are seasonal hires, around holiday time, for example, and that they don't carry the full weight of benefits of a full-time employee, of an ordinary employee. So that's a really important conversation that's happening in this industry right now, as well as the larger kind of gig economy workforce that you and I have talked about. There are a lot more people, a lot more types of jobs now in the U.S. that don't carry the full weight of full-time benefits, and that's certainly a conversation that's happening in the transportation industry right now.
Yeah, well, good stuff there, Devin. Appreciate you coming in early, and also I know you're battling some allergies, so appreciate you coming on and joining us this morning. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll talk to you later in the week on the podcast.
Sounds good, Jeff. Take care.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. We're off to a great start this week. Hey, have a financial topic or someone of interest that you think we should interview? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, and more, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.